Hello and welcome to the Knowing Show. I am your host, Christene Marie. Tonight we are diving into a follow up on a conversation started actually this morning. I have been going live every single morning since January 1st, reviewing it's called A Course in Miracles. It's a book really just it's felt like mental gymnastics for me in so many ways. I started reading this at the beginning of 20, or actually at the end of 2023. Nope. At the end of 2024, heading into 2025, I started reading this book and it's like a textbook. It's so dense and I tend to like consume books. So I'll read the same book for a couple of months and just pick it up when I have kind of time and um and then put it down after even just reading a page or two because I'm like I want to integrate that. I want to change my life according to that lesson or that concept and then I'll pick it back up when I'm kind of ready to consume something else. So I have not finished the textbook of A Course in Miracles, but they have a daily workbook. And so you do one lesson every single day for 365 days. It's been so good. And one of the things that I've learned over the last 6 months of going live every single day is the more we talk about what we're learning, the more it solidifies in us. And so, frankly, for those listening, whether you decide to create your own content or just really intentionally have conversations around the dinner table, sharing what we learn in whatever modality, it really like cements it in us. And it also challenges us as we start to have back and forth and dialogue around a concept. It illuminates it in such a larger way. Jordan Peterson even says this concept of like, ideally, we have the ability to take a concept in our mind and actually battle back and forth around that concept and really go to war with ourselves to figure out what we really believe about something. How much more so in a form such as this, and then how much more so in person and in conversations with other people. I've been hosting something called the Knowing Dinner ever since 2024, and also the Knowing Retreats. And so the whole, I guess you could say, model for the dinners is that I come with a question and then we go around for about 2.5 hours, and everybody answers that one question. And we get really deep with people. You know, folks, sometimes we end up crying, and sometimes it's just really, really unpacking layers and going deeper by way of additional questions on top of the first one that I shared. And it's like a really, really it's what do I want to call it? I would honestly say a precious time because it's people really opening up and sharing parts of who they are in a way that most of the time when we get together with folks, it's surrounded in a big group and it's surrounded with not just people, but also sometimes it can just be kind of shallow conversations because we don't have the genesis question to kind of kick us into gear and go deeper. So it allows for space to go deep. So I just want to hop over to the chat. I'm live in a couple different places, but Brian, so good to see you. Paul, Devin, thank you guys for joining tonight. We are talking about a conversation that actually was started this morning on A Course in Miracles conversation. We were going through lesson 24 today. And one of the things that we were talking about this morning, the lesson actually has to do a lot with the fact that we actually don't have our best interests at heart or best interests in mind, which at first blush, you're like, wait a second, of course I do. I want what's best for me more than it does. But as we were going through the lesson this morning, it really unpacks how when we actually lean into what it is that we want, usually there's very conflicting out. And so today's exercise, this is the exercise that we are supposed to do. And I just want to say a quick moment, shout out in the chat, BAF. Good to see you. Thanks for joining. Banana Harry, no. Sounds exciting. But thank you for coming, Lou, Gimon, Chris. Thank you so much for hopping on, y'all. We are diving into a conversation that was started this morning, but I wanted to share with you literally the phrase that catalyzed tonight's conversation for context, because the more that I've been engaging with other people, the more definitions matter and context matters before we dive into any subject. In fact, some of the folks who go at it in debates with each other for like 3 days. They will start the next, the day after the first debate, they'll actually open their remarks with, I'm going to repeat back to you what I hear you saying. And then you have to verbally affirm that I'm saying it right. Because if we're not fully understanding where someone's coming from, it is so easy it's like ships in the night. We just completely miss each other. So I want to read to you what it is that we've been, the lesson from this morning, and then the prompt that I've been kind of moving through. I set my alarm about 5 different times today and went through this prompt. So in the situation, so this is what you're supposed to do. There's 5 practice periods today where you're supposed to take the prompt that she gives you. So this is the prompt. In the situation regarding blank, you put in whatever it is that makes you upset. I would like, and then you insert whatever outcome to happen. And I would like, insert another outcome to happen. And then you end it with, I do not perceive my own best interests. And y'all, I found today when I did this exercise, I just transitioned down to a new area for a few months. And I found, like, what do I hope for? So I took this time that I'm here, these 4 months, and I closed my eyes and I was like, okay, I would like, what is it? In the situation involving my recent move, I would like, and then I inserted outcome. And what I found is that I had about 5 to 10 different outcomes that just came to mind. And a lot of them were actually very much so in conflict with each other. And that's where the phrase is, I do not have my own best interests. What is it? I do not perceive my own best interests. It's so wild because we think we do, but then when we actually start doing the work and listening, it's like, oh my gosh, this morning I gave the example, I want freedom in relationships. I want all the flexibility. I don't want anyone to depend on me. And I want to be wanted. I want to be included. I don't want to be left out. Those are very much so coming in conflict with each other. And so while we were looking at this exercise from this morning, I encouraged people to write effectively, I wish. So for every single circumstance that came to mind that felt rather upsetting for us, literally write down, I wish, and then just let the pen or pencil flow. What I've found, because we'll do this exercise sometimes at the knowing retreat. So the knowing dinner is a space for about 2.5 hours where I lead with a question and then everybody answers for themselves. The knowing retreat is what I call the boot camp of the soul. It's 3 or 4 days, and we just go so deep into removing the layers. Michelangelo, I can't say his name. Michelangelo was asked one time, how did you create David? David was just this sculptor unlike anything other. That in his time, especially, it just was remarkable how he created this beautiful piece of art. And I mean, honestly, it's stunning. I haven't seen it in person. I've been to Florence, but I haven't seen Michelangelo or David by Michelangelo. But he was asked, how did you create David? And Michelangelo said, I removed everything that David was not to get to David. And so a lot of times we actually need to shed the layers to get to the truth of who we are, the truth of how we really are feeling or thinking, or what's going on inside of us. And so this boot camp of the soul is effectively that, removing the layers and really analyzing what's inside of me, like who's there. And with this exercise today and what we do at the retreats is that we actually take a moment in time, a moment that was painful, a moment that was hard, a relationship, and then we write out, I wish. And it's just, I wish, let's say I hosted a retreat just for men, and every single man who came, their father had left them. That wasn't planned. It was serendipitous, to say the least. So every man there had lost his father by way of him choosing to leave. Losing someone by their own design is devastating. And we don't talk about grieving the living enough. We talk about grieving the dead, but we don't talk about grieving the living. And so to have your father intentionally choose to leave you, I just cannot imagine that amount of pain. So taking that circumstance as an example and then writing down, I wish you'd stayed. I wish I had followed you. I wish I had taken better care of my mom. I wish you were dead. Like all these things that actually, when you read the list, you look at it and you're like, oh, there's some conflicting wishes here. Because at the end of the day, there's just so much pain. But in allowing the free flow subconscious to just write out, like, I wish and whatever it is. So this morning, that was an encouragement in terms of in addition to what she had given us. So the prompt was, in this experience, put in the blank of whatever the experience is, and then you effectively say, my ideal outcome would be, and then you insert the blank. But I just really like the question of, I wish. What do you wish would have happened? What do you wish were different in a circumstance, in an environment? And that proceeded to having this conversation today because someone put Brian, sweet Brian, put in the chat, or actually he put on my Facebook. Um, he said, "What do you do when you don't know what you want or what you wish for?" And I thought that that was just such an important comment because so much of the time, so much of the time, we actually have our head down and we're busy doing the day to day that we're not actually awake to our own selves, much less what we wish or dream or want to begin with. And so that is the conversation that we're going to have tonight. And that's how we kind of came upon this subject to begin with. But before I keep going, I just want to jump into the chat and say hello to some folks. We are live on a couple different places. And so I just wanted to say hello. Laid back Zach, thank you for joining. Chris, James, Chris, just looking here at some of the chats. Unlikely Art, thank you so much for joining here. That's so encouraging to have you. King Kuswas, good to see you. Massey Mayhem. Guys, I really am excited to have a good conversation tonight. So please feel free to put questions or comments. Like, I'm actually learning a lot from each one of you. The more that you guys are putting your thoughts and what you've learned in the chat around what we're talking about. So please, please, please feel free to put something in here that's worthy of mentioning. Brian, good to see you. I'm glad you're here. Vukalex, however you say it, thank you for joining. Lord Naruku, I'm just looking through. Austin. Brian, you just said, what's the difference between living and existing? I think I existed for a number of years throughout my 20s. I lived in and out of that. I would say that if you're talking about defining terms, from my experience, right? Because that's all we can know and share. I feel like I existed because it wasn't sourced from who I was uniquely created to be. So it was like a replica, kind of a replica of what everyone else was doing around me, who everyone else said I should be. And it was because I was so suppressing my emotions and because I was so not living with the right hemisphere of my brain activated, just my left, and I viewed emotions as weakness. I think that actually it removes, think of it like a trap door almost. Like if we're just staying above the surface of, okay, or actually the iceberg analogy. We were talking about that this morning and yesterday. It's like you see the tip of the iceberg. And if we're only engaging at that level, we only can go so deep and we can only experience so much of life. If we're unwilling to experience emotions that are bad or painful, or we've already experienced life to be painful, and so we're unwilling to then experience joy because we don't want to be brought back to pain. So we're just living at this like very neutral part in life, and we're unwilling to feel. We're never really going beneath the surface, because once we start going beneath the surface, man, it's like it's kind of like living from here up. We're just in our head. We're not actually accessing our heart. We're not actually accessing our body. What I've experienced so much over the last couple of years is that emotions and our physical body are really, really linked. I get sensations in my body when something is not right. Like my gut, it starts firing, my chest tightens, even my throat will start to close up. And I'm learning that actually different physical manifestations are tied to different things that have gone wrong in the past. Like if my throat is tightening, am I actually not speaking the truth, or is there something I'm ignoring about my own experience that I haven't been paying attention to? And then with the gut, a lot of times in the gut, when you have a sensation there, sometimes it can be tied to shame. And so once we start paying attention to where we're sensing different emotions in our body, or even just sensations at all, whether it's emotional or just a physical sensation of like chest tightening, then we can really start to pay attention to like what's going on beneath the iceberg surface, underneath, this massive cascading down iceberg of all this data. Our body stores data. Our emotions have data, just like how our intellect has data from years past. We've been cultivating our data, our mind, in the intellectual intelligence for many of us decades, but we've never really touched the physical intelligence and the emotional intelligence. So we have just such little access to those parts of us. So when we think about going beneath the iceberg, going effectively starting to connect what's going on in our brain to our heart, or even to just physical bodies, there's a book by Bessel van der Kolk. He was a psychologist who, through his research, he coined the term PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, because up until his work, a lot of the war veterans specifically were being thrown in mental hospitals because people couldn't understand how they would be totally normal, totally fine, and then all of a sudden they'd hear a noise, or it would be, one morning they'd wake up and it's June 6th, and 10 years ago on June 6th, their buddies were attacked and then all of them died except for them. They'd wake up and go manic, or they'd hear a sound and go manic. And it's because their body doesn't know that they're not back there in Vietnam. They don't know that they're actually here in the present and they're safe. And so what his work did was correlating the physical sensations and how it relates to the mind, and how literally your brain, like logically, consciously, what you're processing is so often after your physical body or your emotional body kicks into gear. So our brain is like translating everything that's going on inside us. And so the goal, so much of the last 4 years, has been to shine a spotlight on everything underneath the surface, everything going on inside me that, frankly, I haven't known about, I haven't paid attention to, I haven't cultivated any kind of access to the data. I have a branding and marketing business, and I was serving as chief marketing officer for a home service company. When I got involved, they were around $34 million. And I went in and was looking for data, and they had hardly any data around any of their marketing spend, around any of their affiliate marketing, around all of this. They were spending millions of dollars every single year on marketing, but they had hardly any data to account for it. And so we had to go and actually set up systems to start recording the data. And then only after a good 6 months of recording the data, or let's say 3 months of recording the data, could we actually start seeing trends. But even then, because it's a home service business, they work in seasons. So it's only after a full 12 months can we start seeing any kind of nuance and any kind of predictability in terms of forecasting for the next season. But then you take into account that, well, that year it was dry. It actually wasn't raining much, or maybe it was raining way more. So now we need to compound years upon years of data, ideally decades, to then be able to forecast and know, what, the forecast for this summer in the Midwest is looking, 60 degrees. And then all of a sudden we're going into a big freeze in November, which is very unusual. We now have decades of data that we then can forecast and predict accordingly how we should spend our money, how we should be advertising, what's going to move the needle with our customers. But when we first got involved, $34 million company, they had no data. And y'all, that's how a lot of folks who are so successful wind up being millionaires and having no data, having no access to themselves, because they've been grinding and focusing on something outside of them for so many years. And they end up being completely alone, or completely disconnected from their families, or completely disconnected from themselves. And so this work to know who we are is so incredibly important, so that we start mining data as we go, so that we don't have to one day wake up and be like, all right, none of this has actually brought me joy. And we see celebrities who tell these stories of like, I made it big in Hollywood. I made all the money. And then I realized, what's the point of it when I'm miserable? And so the goal is that we're cultivating ourselves in addition to, yes, pursuing our dreams, in addition to, yes, pursuing financial success, but we're pursuing a holistic, integrated health and live to your point, Brian. What's the difference of living and existing? Living is having a holistic experience and encounter with life. There's this phrase from a song that I just love. It says, I want to live this one wild life. I want to rip it apart. And the question is, do we and are we willing to live that kind of life? Do we want that to begin with? So, this question of what to do when you don't know what you want and when you don't really know what to wish for, that's actually a really, really important question. And I'm so glad that you asked that, because honestly, it's so easy to live on default and just exist, where we're not having any emotions and we're not having big experiences with life that are bringing us joy and, yes, also bringing us sorrow. Someone said this a couple weeks ago and I wish I'd saved it. It was such a beautiful phrase. They put it here in the chat. Oh, I remember it was last week. They said, grief is the cost and price tag of love. So if we're not willing to pay the price tag for love, which could be grief, then we're never probably going to know love and know the epitome of what it could be and know the fullness of the joy that it also brings. And yes, also the grief. You know, my sister and her husband just had such a beautiful marriage. And then he was killed by a drunk driver. And so looking back, does she wish she had never experienced that love so that she never knew the degree of pain? And frankly, I think each one of us needs to ask that question. I encountered another woman and she lost her son was, I think, 3 days and passed away. And she told me that she has intentionally chosen not to feel again because she doesn't want to know that grief. So the question is ours for the answering. Are we willing to feel? Are we willing to live at the price tag of pain? And also, there's the good consequence of joy too, you know, and pain, man, it's like when my brother-in-law was killed, I felt like I saw this picture in my mind's eye, which was my soul and and frankly, when my husband left, that just added that deepened this picture of like my soul and my inner being and my inner world was just like this cavern, this cave. And sorrow goes in and like digs deep into the ground. And actually, the grief expands the cavern, the size. You know, what was once this little cavern, grief comes in and just, man, it hollows you out. And in the hollowing, it expands also our capacity for joy, because now I'm greater, I'm wider, I have more depth, more girth, so to say, to experience, yes, the pain of the loss, but also the joy on the other side. So when my sister and her baby girl moved in, my niece was 3 weeks old when my brother-in-law was killed. And so we just sat and it felt like this holy space of just so much pain with my sister and her baby girl. And when my baby niece had her first belly laugh, it was more joy than probably normal. Like my other nieces and nephews, I love them so much. And there's just not the intensity of emotion there because there wasn't the intensity of grief. You know, both of my nieces with my brother were born into a very happy, healthy family. Whereas with my sister, 3 weeks after her baby girl was born, you know, Alyssa Rose's daddy was killed. And so it's like, man, there's just so much pain and so much joy. And I just, as I'm telling the story, I just keep getting chills because that time, it's so incredibly painful and it's visceral. It's a visceral encounter with life. But we have to ask that question. Am I willing to feel both ends of the spectrum, the joy and the pain, the sorrow and the overwhelming delight that can be life? You know, I honestly, this just happened. And so I'm just going to share this. I hope it's okay. I'll find out if it's not. I posted this on my Instagram. This is by y'all, I don't know. I haven't studied Stoicism and I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name. I think a lot of people know how to pronounce his name. I don't know how to say it. Epic. Oh gosh. Epictetus. I don't know. I should have just spelled it for you. I have no idea. Epictetus. He's a Stoic philosopher. This is what he says. If your choices are beautiful, so too will you be. And then I got a message from someone that just was so upset because we live in a really broken world. And he's like, the world's not beautiful, it's broken. And, and he was making good points because it is broken. There's so much pain. And two, we also have the choice about what we focus on. We have the choice. This is the whole thing of A Course in Miracles every single morning. And it's maddening because I remember when my brother-in-law was killed, I did not want to participate in joy whatsoever. Joy was just kind of on the other side of what was the natural way of living. And living, Brian, to your question of like, what's the difference between living and existing? As I was living in the grief and letting myself feel it, I couldn't help but also feel the joy that was just a natural, it was like bubbling forth. There's an overflow. Our bodies actually need the other side of joy. Otherwise, it just plummets you into the ground. And that's why people literally die of a broken heart. But if we're willing to experience both ends of the spectrum, that's the thing. Are we willing? Because we can't say yes to the joy and no to the pain. And we can't say yes to the pain and no to the joy. Because something's going to give, and usually it's our mental health that gives as a result of suppressing and rejecting what's going on at either end of the spectrum. So, Brian, I hope I answered that question. Frankly, I'd love to hear your perspective, and I'm going to jump down through the chat here just to check in, but I think that that's such an important question. Are you willing to experience living life to the fullest? And we have to be willing to operate beyond just the what's showing of the iceberg, which so often is kind of like our intellect and our cognitive reasoning in the left hemisphere of the brain. Are we willing to actually go beneath the surface to our physical intelligence, our spiritual intelligence, emotional intelligence, and all that our being, our inner self, our inner life has to tell us? There's so much that it knows and so much that it stores and so many stories, so much of the past that is showing up and actually guiding us in the present. But without intentional pursuit, without intentional shining the spotlight, we're probably going to miss it. So just going back to the chat. All right. I'm just jumping down. Austin, good to see you. Pro Charged. Chris, oh my. Some of this is not very nice, y'all. I had a friend tell me the other day, he was like, maybe when people are unkind in the chat, that's them saying that they need love. So God bless you. Paul, Paul, I wanted to tell you actually, I have a chat here, or not a chat. I'm sorry. I don't have a chat. There is just a quick little form that I asked someone on my team to create because I really wanted to be able to discuss topics that you guys want to discuss. So if this topic is it's like not resonating, I'd love to be able to chat about something that you'd be interested in. So this form here that I'm just putting here in the chat, it will answer, well, it gives you the opportunity to answer what topics or questions you'd like to discuss here. And then also, if you'd ever want to do a virtual or in-person event, I host in-person events and then also virtual workshops. So yeah, would love to hear from you in that regard. Eric, good evening. I hope you're enjoying Florida. That sounds like great weather compared to my family's all in DC, and it's just so intense. Kerbin Stopper, I have not actually that I'm aware of, but I'm excited for the day. Austin, thanks for joining. Matthew Mayhem, just going through these. Okay, Sweeney, inner love. I love that. All right, just coming down here. 𝐤𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐲. Oh, Christopher Adams, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for joining. Ortho, thank you for coming. Austin says, okay, she's sort of real. I honestly, it's so annoying how much is AI these days. You just never know. It's so bad. Sweeney, live, don't dream. I love that. It's so interesting. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this. I think so much of our life and the way that we live actually we project from that place of dreaming. Like I this was the one time in my life where this was so obvious. So ever since I was a little girl, I had wanted to be in just like a Christmas Hallmark film, like nothing massive, just a cute little film. And I always felt so embarrassed by that, but that was literally my childhood dream, and I always felt, I don't know, I grew up in a very Christian conservative environment where it was like, don't put yourself in the spotlight, always be serving, put yourself, away hidden. And I just always loved acting for whatever reason. I still don't know why, but I just love it. It's so fun. And I had the opportunity. I was just chatting with some new friends and I just mentioned because he was like, yeah, I won an Emmy. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I was fangirling. And I was like, I've always wanted to be in a Christmas Hallmark type of movie. 9 months later, he calls me. I haven't talked to this guy since I met him in February. And then he calls me 9 months later and is like, hey, are you still in the Maryland area? I need a wife. And I was like, there is no way. You're not even having me audition. It just felt like too good to be true. And so I was like, "Yes, obviously." And, there's no way. So finally, it was, I guess, 3 weeks before the shoot, we started shooting New Year's Day. So it was just before Christmas when we did a round table. And so all the other actors and actresses were on camera. And, I've got the script and we were just doing a read through virtually. And I just got on, we all did the read through, and then I got off, and I was actually at my sister's house alone. I think I was house sitting, or I don't even know why I was there. But I just, like, ran through the house like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, it was so exciting, and it was 3 years ago, and it was just so fun. I think because I dreamed that, I was able to live that. So I think it is important. What do we want? What do we wish for? What do we dream? And to your point, then, here's where it's the integration. It's not staying in that dream state, but actually go and living accordingly to it. When I turned 30, I wrote my eulogy, which in one sense is a dream. Who do I want to be at the end of my life? Hopefully, it's much later than now. And so, who do I want to be at that point in time? And I'm effectively creating a dream of this person and the impact and the lives and the children, hopefully, and this whole legacy that I'll have built. But then I took that legacy, or I'm sorry, that eulogy, and turned it from Christene Marie was to I am. So I made it first person and present tense. And man, I read that eulogy every single day for a year. And frankly, I'm going to start rereading it because it was so important every single morning, like reminded me who I want to be, who I strive to be, and then I live according to that. So I it's like the integration of kind of the existential ideal with grounding it in today, in the present tense. So I've got so much more to learn about that concept, but I've heard people talk about it. I've experienced it a little bit in my life, and I feel like there's something there to continue learning about. Um, oh, Christopher, this is so beautiful. You said, life is an ironic tragedy. We must continue forward. Oof, but our actions only make sense in retrospect. An ironic tragedy uh, when my husband and I were trying to figure out if we were going to stay married, and we went to therapy, and both of our therapists said this sounds like a tragic love story, and that's what it felt so much like that. It was just so devastating, and I think so much of life is that. And to your point, we must continue forward. It's like, okay, what is the dream? What's the ideal? When I'm not experiencing it, what then do I do? That's why I'm so glad you both brought that up, because it's so important that we know our ideal for ourselves. And then we also know our ideal for a relationship, our ideal for our business, so that when we're in relationship with other people, what's the ideal in that regard? But what's my ideal for me? Because I can, for the most part, assume radical responsibility to execute accordingly. Viktor Frankl, he authored the book Man's Search for Meaning. And he said, everything in his life was stripped away. He was in Auschwitz, just basically waiting to go to the gas chambers. His wife had already gone. He lost everything, and he wrote this line that effectively was saying, you can take everything from me, but you cannot take the power of choice. And that's that's really what is ours. Like, we have choice. We have the ability to choose how we show up every single day. We have the ability to choose how we not just how we show up, but who we are in so many ways. It's really exciting. And in that choice lies freedom. So, I'm just so glad you said that. Free from life. Thank you. I'm so glad you're here. That's so encouraging. Torino, thank you for coming on here. Austin, Chris, you're just not being nice tonight. Um, I hope you're okay. I'm sorry about whatever's happening in your life. Let me go back. Sweetie, Sweetie, Rodolfo. Um, thanks for coming. Mike C, if you did, I'm so good for you. Seriously. And Mike C just said, I just got out of jail last night. I'm so happy. Um, it's funny, you say, I'm assuming, I would assume you meant a physical jail, but it's funny because so many of us are living in emotional, mental prison of our own making. So much of the time, if we haven't done the work to actually examine what we have inherited and what we've taken with us from the past, we actually are living in the prison. I called it when like the prison I made for myself was a cage of people pleasing. And I like went into the cage, gave everybody else the key, and then shut the door and locked me in. And I just could not, I couldn't get free for so much of my life. I really, really lived in this self-made cage of codependence and people pleasing. And it was, oh gosh, it's suffocating. So cheers to all of us getting out of jail, but especially you. Kudos to you. That's really, really exciting. Um, is ISAI, I'm not, but thank you for coming. Cameron, very new to your channel. I don't know if we acknowledge the same one, but I do believe in a creator. So I just freaking I love God. But thank you so much for joining on here. I'm glad you're here. The real term, the unlimited, I'll win ma. Thanks for coming. Charlie Angel, Charlie, single Charlie Angel. Animal Life, thanks for coming. I'm so glad you're here. It's good to see your name. Cameron, no, I just said hello. It takes me a little while to get caught up on the chats. I am just jumping down to a few of these comments. All right. I'm scrolling down to get to some ones. Okay. Dub Styles. I'm recognizing the trauma of years ago that I was suppressing and trying to get away from as I pushed forward. Wow, now I'm alchemizing and recognizing my life and I'm able to get over. Ironic. Chills, man. That's so, so powerful. It's wild. I forget where I read this. I think it was today. Honestly, it could have even come from someone in the chat. But effectively, whatever we are suppressing down, it's just a matter of time. And we think that maybe we've gotten over it, and then finally it will come bubbling forth because it's in us. And there's this biblical text that says, "You shall know a tree by its fruit," and so it will inevitably always come up. And so the question is, what's inside? It's like, what is below the iceberg? We were talking a couple minutes ago about the analogy of like, so many of us operate from here up, like the tip of the iceberg. Primarily, it's just the intellect. That's what we've cultivated since childhood. And then when we have pain, we just stuff it down beneath the surface. But all of that's there. And when you look at the proportional weight underneath, that tip of the iceberg is way bigger and way more powerful. I'm actually seeing this. I've been watching, my grandparents get older, and, for half of them have passed on by this point. But as they get older, they become more ornery, and what they suppressed came out and is continuing to come out. And I'm even seeing it with my parents, whatever they didn't share, it's starting to come out. And that doesn't mean it's all bad. Sometimes it's good stuff, but the point is that so much of what we suppress will come out at some point, or it will actually just corrode and erode what is good inside us. It either eats away at us internally or comes out of us because it can't stay suppressed. So either it eats away and kills other parts, or it comes out in terms of like responses that we can't control. So I love that you said alchemizing. Alchemy is probably one of my very favorite concepts. Not ignoring the reality of the situation, but to alchemize something is so incredibly powerful. Um, I love that. All right, I am just jumping down. I quit trying to succeed because I was just living in the results and forgot what I was leaving in the wake. Wow. I quit trying to succeed because I was just living in the results. You know what? It reminds me of the book Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan. Um, Frankly, this is a lesson I need to continuously remind myself of. I feel like I need this, like, not even on my head because then I wouldn't see it, but I need it like as a tattoo or something, to live in the process. The process and the now is the cultivation of who we are. That is the growth period. And so for so long as we're chasing the target, so long as we're chasing the results and the outputs, we're actually missing out on the here and now. Brian, you asked this earlier, how do I live versus exist? And I think living is, yes, experiencing the full range of human emotion and the human experience with all intelligences being online. It's also living now. Existing would mean that we're actually not here in the present. It's in the future. And here's another thing, just to add dynamicism to it. It's our present. We're not somewhere else. Their present is not here with us. So really, if we're living in the news, or we're living in someone else's, according to someone else's feed, we're not actually living our life. And that's great some of the time. If we're in a really dark place, we actually need to live that so that we're not suppressing it and pushing it down. But also, if we're actually enjoying some really good seasons of our life and other people are struggling, that's a hard one. To experience empathy for the other person and extend prayer while staying here and present, or extend help. Sometimes realistically, so much of what we're seeing in the news, there's not a ton we can do other than advocacy. Like, now we get into the question of philanthropy and advocacy and all of that. But I'm talking about right here, right now, in terms of like the normal day to day, like from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed. How are you living? How are you choosing to live? What are you training your mind in accordance with what you're processing or not beneath the surface of the iceberg? The alien medals, thank you so much for coming. That's so encouraging. Dennis Bass, I do. Thanks for coming on here. Mr. FNH, thanks for coming. Mass Mayhem. Lyndall Jr., I'm so glad you're here. You must go through the pain. Oh, refusing it will cost you 10x as much. Isn't that the truth? User Alan, I feel like if you've never been through it and gotten to the other side, it's really, really hard to believe that. But when my kind of future fell apart, I had my sister as an example. Like, she went through and moved through the grief of losing her husband in such a beautiful way, where she really honored him and owned her grief and chose hope. And so I knew, I kind of had seen this like model of grief. And for those of you who would ever, if you're kind of in that place, I wish I had thought of this the other day. We actually had a really long conversation around grief, and her website, I think it's I Choose Hope, Jennifer. I'm just looking this up. Yeah. It's jenniferfarlow.com. So this, I don't think, she hasn't updated this since 2022. But you'll read all about her story and like the change that happened and how she's lived just such a beautiful life. I want to show you. I'm just going to show you. I'm going to share my screen because she's so beautiful and I'm so proud of her. This is my sister, and her husband was killed when he was 26 years old. And this is my niece, Alyssa Rose, and she was 3 weeks old when her daddy died. And I'm just so proud of my sister. She's such a hero. And we get to choose. Okay. Oh, I'm so sad. It says that my voice you guys are saying my voice isn't matching. That's weird. I don't know why. Hmm. Oh, well. Oops. Um, mm, wow. Oh, man, this is, like, one of the most realist that's a word apparently. Um, most real these 2 comments back to back. "You will experience pain regardless. It's up to you whether you choose or not. That pain comes from progress or remorse." Whoa. It reminds me, I was listening to David Goggins the other day. He's a former Navy SEAL. He's known as like the toughest man alive. And he was on Joe Rogan and they were talking about effectively choosing your arena. And I love the concept of the arena because Theodore Roosevelt talks about it in his speech from 1912, being the man in the arena versus standing on the sidelines and being the critic who points and kind of sneers. Um, Go and choose your pain, like, go cultivate the muscles and cultivate yesterday, 2 days ago, 3 days ago, I had a gentleman come and join me on the Knowing Show, Robert Lee, and he was talking about how, his son he died, I guess, I think a couple days after he was born, and then a year or 2 later, he lost his dad. But what he pointed out during that conversation was that he had done so much reading, so much like education effectively around how to strengthen your mind and how to conquer your mind and how to take care of yourself so that when devastation came and met him, knocking on his door, he had something to combat it. He had some way to basically like tend to himself. So the work that we're doing right here, right now in this conversation and outside of it, us chatting in the mornings for A Course in Miracles and us really moving through the pain and talking about it before the pain comes. This is the time. And if the pain is here and now, there's no time like the present. But for so many of us, if we haven't yet, now's the time. My dad told me this. I remember being 17 years old. One of my dearest friends, her dad got ALS and he passed away, and she was a senior in high school. It was like a couple months before graduation. And I went to my dad and I was like, "Dad, how do I know that I would have the faith to withstand something like that? How do I know that I wouldn't like basically turn and curse God?" And he was like, "Well, that's why you strengthen relationships now. Well, before like it gets terrible like that. Like ask the questions now. Go contend with God. Build the muscles." And so this work on the Knowing Show is that it's building the muscles and building the strengthening our foundation so that, and it's almost like filling of the reservoir so that when pain does come and we have so much built up so that as we're pulling on our own sources from within us, like there's strength we need to pull on from ourselves. We have a reservoir. We have so much in our tank and capacity to lend to ourselves. And then Dub Style says, "I was addicted to opioids, trying to hide the pain. When I realized that I was fooling myself, I learned how important it is to feel that pain, to heal from it." Man, you cannot heal what you do not feel. I heard that one time and that just like shocked me. It's so, so, so good. Um, that's so, so important. Christopher Adams trying to help me with saying the Stoics name. I totally butchered that. That's so funny. All right, I'm just gonna scroll down. I know that I'm so far behind in the chat. I'm just going down to the end. Oh, see, Martin Love, I'm glad you're here. Grief is physically exhausting. Your brain needs rest to process trauma. Isn't that so true? Honestly, there's something around sleep that first, we're not taught how to grieve. And second, the grieving process, it's like using up so many calories, it's so exhausting. So I'm so glad you brought that up because it's so exhausting. I love Dub Styles. You said, "Ask the uncomfortable question without fear of recourse." I'm glad you said that because actually so much of this work is building a relationship with ourselves where we can feel safe to go beneath the surface and go down, to the deeper part of the iceberg and actually explore what's there. Do I even Am I going to extend judgment with what I find, or can I be curious and really take care of myself while I go through the process of healing, while I go through the process of grief? I was chatting, a dear old friend of mine called me today, totally out of the blue, and I like was like, "Oh my gosh," it was so fun. But we got to talking just within 10 minutes. We just went so deep, and it was really cool. Um, we were talking, and I just want to go back to exactly what you said because it reminded me of this, asking the uncomfortable question and being safe with ourselves, doing the work to tend to ourselves along the way so that effectively that environment, our childhood, that we assign so much blame over as kids, we're creating that environment today for our children, for ourselves. Like we have taken the mantle from our parents and now we're our own caretakers, and there's something around that. I actually just watched this movie on the plane yesterday called The Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey. It's with Colin Firth and Margot Robbie, and it was a very interesting movie. But what's so interesting is that I mean, it's totally just a fun. I actually don't know what style of film it is. If anyone knows, tell me because I don't know. But it's effectively going to various parts in their life and encountering and like squaring off with everything that they had avoided. And what was so interesting is that they were their own caretakers and healers in some ways. Like I am the only one that knows the depth of pain that I've experienced, and therefore I'm the only one who can go to that place and tend to it, to the wound. And I have experienced myself a presence of God that has allowed for me to not just do it alone. And that I think is really important to emphasize, that it's just like there's so much hope. Like my sister talks about in her blog, choosing hope. We don't have to do it alone. We don't have to go about the pain alone. And actually, I'm doing starting tomorrow, I'm going to be doing a 61-day challenge with anyone who's wanting to do it. So if you guys want to join me, I life is so life is really lonely in so many ways, like the gentleman who messaged me earlier today and was like, the world is so broken. It is in so many ways. And we get to choose the lens through which we view the world. And so I'm starting a 61-day challenge. We're starting Friday to take us all the way through the end of March, but we're meeting tomorrow on just a Google Meet to go through what is the one thing that we want to strengthen in our lives. Do we want to strengthen our finances? Do we want to strengthen emotions? And we're really going to hold each other accountable and in a WhatsApp group. And the purpose for that is so one, we don't have to go out about it alone, that we actually are so intentional. It's just one thing every day. Like for me, when I started going live, it was just like, I'm just going to go live at whatever time works for me, whenever. I just have to, for however long, I have to keep my word to myself. And so the goal is that we just do the thing. It's not perfect. It's not even as consistent in terms of like same date, same time, same place. But it needs to be one thing just for 61 days because that time allowed, but then it also really allows for just focus in intentional growth in area. So tomorrow we're meeting. I would love for you guys to join if you'd like. I just put the chat in, daily life short videos. I'm real. But I would love for you guys to join if you're interested. I would really ask, there's something around this time that I really want it to be intentional. Like the rules for this are that we're all committing to radical responsibility, where we're not sitting in the passenger seat of our life and blaming everybody else for why our car is going in the direction it is, but rather we're willing to sit in the driver's seat, assume radical responsibility, and do the work. It's hard. And then the second thing is that we are committing to doing the non-sexy work, which is showing up every single day to the thing which we committed to, even though it might not be what's trending, even though it might be something I've been told many, many times not to do this show and not to go live every day. Check out the comments. People are very mean sometimes. Like I really have had to do this because I felt like it's the right thing to do. So the question for you is, what's the thing that you feel really called to do? What do you know is right for you over like through the end of Q1? And so tomorrow, a lot of folks actually have said like, I don't know what my one thing is, but I want to jump on and we can kind of figure it out together. So if you want to, I would love to have you. We're just doing a 61-day challenge and we'll have a WhatsApp group for accountability. So I just dropped the form in there, but I'll go ahead and drop it again. I'm just checking in with the chat. Um, Wendell Jr., you always come to my defense. It's not AI. Thank you. Robert Hamaker, thank you. I love white. I used to only wear black. I actually wrote in my journal in 2019. I love bows and pretty things is what I wrote, but I only wear black because it makes me feel safe. So wearing white has been an involvement of healing. um, so I'm so glad you said that. All right, Barry Pulaski, thanks for joining. Harper, Hopra, C. Martin, being confident in this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. I love that. Austin, oh, thank you. I appreciate your note. Brian, I'm so glad. I hope you joined. Brian, come join the challenge. And Austin, you too. Guys, truly, Dub Styles, be the change you seek. Yes. That's all we needed from this whole conversation. Be the change. Y'all, we get to be the change. Man, you saying that got me fired up. Y'all, we have so much power. It's just a matter of, am I willing to take back the driver wheel, the driver's seat? And there's something scary about that because now we can't blame anybody else for our life. You know, yes, there might be reasons why, but I am back in the driver's seat. I am choosing now how I'm going to show up. And again, power of choice. That's what Viktor Frankl said, the man in Auschwitz who everything was taken away from him. And yet he said, no, I have the power to choose how I respond. Between stimulus and response is choice. He says that in his book. Y'all, if a man who had everything physically in the world taken away, yet could maintain his own emotional, mental, cognitive ability to experience and live life and not just die like many of his comrades did, we do too, surely. Even though we live in a broken world, we don't have to do it alone. And so with that, I'm so glad you all joined tonight. Thank you so much. I put the 61-day challenge here. I'm just going to go ahead and put it back in. If you guys want to join, again, please don't join if you're not going to take this seriously. We're right now, our group is small. It's just 10 people. And frankly, they joined through, I gave a presentation the other day at Digital Marketer, which is a community for digital marketers. And so I gave this whole presentation and I created the challenge as a result of that. And I wanted to extend it to you guys. So please come in only if you're serious, and fill out the form. You know, that form will help me better understand where you're coming from. And frankly, what do you feel called to do? Because man, what I feel so called to do is really, man, we live in a world where we don't know how to have relationships and healthy dynamics, and we don't know how to know ourselves. And I have experienced so much healing. And even as I'm sharing this, I feel uncomfortable in my stomach because it's vulnerable for me to share this. I just care so much about healed, healthy individuals taking our power back that we handed away. We didn't even mean to. Living, to your point, Brian, living versus existing. And each one of us, no matter how hard. Viktor Frankl was in Auschwitz. My sister lost her husband at 26 years old with a 3-week-old baby. You and I surely can take up our power and wield it for good. And so with that, thank you all so much for joining. Harper Hopra, thank you for coming on. James, hey. Brendan Hoey, thank you for joining. Some guy. Volkaleski. Austin, thank you so much for joining. Bruno. Dub Styles. I'm so glad that I just so appreciated your comments tonight. Thank you so much. I hadn't seen your name before, so I'm just really glad that you came on and you just had a lot of insight. So thank you. Hi, Lords of Pizza Planet. Man, pizza sounds great. I have never healed from abstract grief. I think that's something I would need a definition of terms on, but I'm actually going to save this. You know what? Hold that thought, and then if you don't mind, go ahead and put that question, defining terms if you can, put that question here. I created a form that, Brian, you asked the question on Facebook, and then that guided our conversation tonight. I don't think I really answered it. I'm sorry. We'll do this one again. I didn't really get into how do you know what you want? I got taken away with the question of living versus existing. So I'm sorry for getting derailed. But I'm gonna address this tomorrow or on Monday. And then what did you say? Let's see. Hi, Lords of Pizza Planet, abstract grief. I'm actually super intrigued by that. So if you put that in I just put it here in the chat, but I'll go ahead and put it one more time so it's at the top. Grief for what never was. Man, that's like a movie, a book, podcast. I'm going to copy that. Let's talk about that tomorrow. I'll be going live at 8:30. Oh, I just pinned your thing. I don't know if you guys can see that, but I guess you can do that. All right. That's what we're going to be talking about tomorrow, y'all. Grief for what never was. So thank you. That's such a beautiful, brilliant question. Dub Styles, I'm sorry I didn't see or recognize it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I feel terrible for not seeing it sooner. But thank you. Thank you for your comments. All right. Abstract grief. C. Martin Love says abstract grief refers to the experience of mourning a loss that lacks a physical or concrete existence. All right, y'all. This is what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. 8:30 a.m. Eastern tomorrow morning. We will be going live. 8:30 p.m. tomorrow night. We will be going live. Tomorrow morning we're going through A Course in Miracles. Tomorrow night we're going to be talking about grief for what never was. So with that, thank you all so much for joining. I hope you have a wonderful night, and just, man, I hope all of us feel a little bit more alive, truly, rather than just existing. So with that,